So, first of all, good morning.
Good morning.
And we're going to be starting with this morning's talk, a kind of survey of our second chant from this morning, the guideposts of silent illumination. Actually, I'd been intending to work with the author of that text, Hongzou, who's from about a century before Dogen. And Hongzou was at the temple Tiantong in China, where Dogen found his true teacher, as he referred to him, Ru Jing. So, in that fashion, Dogen became very familiar with Hongzou, his importance for the lineage that Dogen was entering through his teacher, Ru Jing. And the guidepost of silent illumination, just the whole teaching of silent illumination, is kind of pointing forward to Dogen's approach of Zazen as being the foundation of practice. That practice is foundational because practice is enlightenment. And what is practice? Zazen. And for Hongzou, he just simply referred to it as silent illumination. So I had been intending, as I said, to get us launched on that. And toward that end, on the end table in my living room, which for those of you that are familiar with my house and how it's kept or unkept in certain sections. That's one of the unkept sections because it's stacked with books. And this was near the top because I was planning to get to that. And this being Taigen Dan Layton's Cultivating the Empty Field from 25 years ago, which was the first, to my knowledge, extensive focused look at the teachings of Hongzou. And I got a copy hot off the presses at that time, autographed and all, because that was the summer that I had my first encounter with Taigen, doing a sesshin with him. And my first teacher, in a move that would prove pretty important for my development as a Zen student, assigned me the role of being Taigen's attendant during that sesshin. So it was one of those relationships that immediately formed and lasted for quite a stretch of time. So this is my way of kind of honoring that relationship and its importance to me. But then what really brought this to a head was yesterday. Kimberly and I had lunch at Tommy's, and afterwards we popped into Mac's Backs because they had several books on order for her, one of which had come in, and that's more current on silent illumination. This is from the Chan tradition, whose chief contemporary teacher, Sheng Yen. I have several of his books on my bookshelf. So he's a really important teacher just for Mahayana Buddhism in general, transcending Chan. And Chan, of course, is just the Chinese term for Zen.
Why did I always think that was pronounced Chan?
Because of Charlie Chan, which is also spelled Chan. I think that's the main reason.
Japanese Chan is a diminutive.
It's Chan.
It's Chan, yeah. I can honestly say in Zen circles, I have never heard it referred to as Chan.
Well,
So,
that's like sashimi.
yeah. Sashin, because it's created from shin.
In California, we called it sashimi.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how those things happen, but you know, I
But
mean,
it's chan.
Chan, yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
definitely Chan. And I'm going to end up getting a copy of this book as well, so that can also help inform my presentation. But what I planned for this morning, and I think it'll get continued into next Saturday as well, is to go through the introductory chapters, because actually Teigen has here both a preface and an introduction. So these are the two things that I'll be looking at over the next probably 2 weeks. Just kind of extracting what I think are key elements from these chapters to get us prepared for a deep dive into the text itself of the guidepost of silent illumination. And perhaps, looking further afield, since this is leading us to Dogen, maybe a good follow up to this will be to take a deep look at Dogen's Fukan Zazengi, which was his first writing when he came back to Japan after his 4 years in China. And the translation of Fukan Zazengi is universal recommendation for the practice of Zazen. So it's kind of immediately that you would anticipate his Dogen's first writing after coming back to Japan would be capturing the heart of what he's bringing back from China. And it's echoing Hongzou's teaching of silent illumination. So I think this would be a nice package for us to spend some time looking at. Since this is our practice, is the practice of Zazen, and we follow in Dogen's footsteps in terms of seeing practice as being enlightenment, which means enlightenment isn't a future state that we attain. It's right here, right now. We either awaken here or this moment passes us by. And we're not present. We're not really engaged. So, in that sense, we can see practice already as being about engagement, our engagement with our life, with ourselves, and through that gate of ourself, through all other beings. So let's turn now to Teigen's teaching. And early on in the preface, he says, Hongzhou was the first master fully to articulate silent illumination, a form of non-dual, objectless meditation in which the essence of Buddhist truth is experienced. So the first master to fully articulate.
Would you read that again?
Sure, absolutely. Hongzhou was the first master fully to articulate silent illumination, a form of non-dual, objectless meditation in which the essence of Buddhist truth is experienced. Yeah. And the essence of Buddhist truth is experienced is at the heart of this non-dualism, because the experience makes it direct. immediate, without an intermediary, which is what our concepts are seen as forming. It's our intermediary to reality. So that's why, scientists develop their theories. They dice up the nature of reality into its various parts, energy fields, particles, and so on. And those concepts are simply intermediaries to help us understand what's actually happening out there. But what we're talking about here is this direct experience. And direct experience, by its very nature, is non dual. That's why Dogen speaks of this sense of dropping off of self, which occurs through the silent piece of silent illumination. So we create, as best we can, a silent environment here, objectively speaking. Sometimes, a shop vac might appear in our in our hearing, but the importance of the silence isn't what's going on externally. That's what's going on within us. So if there's something external that's really pretty insistent about getting our attention, the best approach, kind of like in the martial arts, you might say, is to go that way. Take your focus and just put it on the sound. If the shop vac had kept on going, that's certainly what I would have done. I would have been focused just on that, completely and totally. And then I can achieve silence in the midst of all that noise. Try that sometime if you're in a busy, like an airport terminal or something. And just for a couple of minutes, just kind of be at one with all that hustle and bustle. And you'll find that you can actually experience stillness, that silence and silent illumination, right in the middle of all that. It's definitely possible through our practice. So it's not dependent upon external conditions. But that being said, as we'll see when we at some point get to Dogen, early on in Fukan Zazengi, he talks about how a quiet room is suitable. He didn't say necessary, but it sure is nice to have a quiet room to practice in. So, having made that statement about Hongzou and his importance for this teaching, for this entry point into the non-dual, we then flow from the preface into the introduction. And the next point Taigen makes that I wanted to share with you this morning is that silent illumination involves withdrawal from exclusive focus on a particular sensory or mental object to allow intent apprehension of all phenomena as a unified totality. So I'm also going to go on to the next sentence, but before I do, let's look at what's being said here relative to the general instruction for meditation when people are starting out, to put their attention, their focus on their breath. So that's not objectless meditation. That's directed towards a specific object, your breath. And there are other objects that you can also use. And the purpose for that is so that you can begin to develop the capacity to focus the mind. For most people, to just drop them into their experience and say, just practice open awareness. That's going to be a struggle. That's going to be a struggle. And you're setting up kind of a benchmark for what meditation should be right out of the gate without any advanced preparation. So there are still teachers, and I'll call them old school. They tend to be either the people from Japan that brought it here, or maybe first generation descendants from that. That this group of people feel that you shouldn't you introducing something like the breath is just causing confusion. That you shouldn't have anything like that. Just start immediately practicing this objectless, non-dual meditation. But for most of us, including this teacher here, we teach initially working with the breath. And that even for people that have been practicing for a considerable period of time with thousands of hours of Zazen practice behind them, there's still room for that practice to continue to use it from time to time. But at least this teaching, even to impart to a beginning student, helps plant the seed that the ultimate practice of Zazen is something a little further. It doesn't exclude working with the breath, but it definitely goes beyond it in a very important way in terms of being able to become a practice that is at one with you in this moment, in this place, in what's happening right here and now. So even when I teach meditation using the breath, I incorporate that into it only insofar as the breath is kind of a good indicator of what's going on with people right here, right now. If you're stressed, you're going to see that immediately right in your breath. If you practice meditation regularly, and that's bringing you into your current situation, what's going on, and you can then sit with that. You've received that signal being transmitted through your body, through your breath, and you can just compassionately be with that. So, and I'll repeat that sentence again, and this time we'll flow into the following sentence. Silent illumination involves withdrawal from exclusive focus on a particular sensory or mental object to allow intent apprehension of all phenomena as a unified totality. This objectless meditation aims at a radical, refined non-dualism that does not grasp at any of the highly subtle distinctions to which our familiar mental workings are prone and which estranges us from our experience. So when we're practicing silent illumination in this objectless meditation practice, it is truly a radical, but yet very refined non-dualism. Because our dualities, remember, are created by our concepts, by our thinking mind. Hence, Dogen's description of Zazen is the art of non-thinking, going beyond thinking. And when we do that, we enter into this non-dualistic realm. If we let go of our thoughts, we're in non-dualism. And we experience this in samadhi states that we experience, when we're truly focused on an activity. So in psychological circles now, these days, it's referred to as flow. Being in a flow state means you're in the non-dualistic realm. And the way you experience that is by becoming locked in. Samadhi, that single-pointed focus that you can hold for sometimes amazing lengths of time, as in the course of an activity, if you're really locked in. And that does not grasp at any of the highly subtle distinctions to which our familiar mental workings are prone. So these subtle distinctions, our mind, as we're all aware, it works in subtle ways, and these thoughts, very subtle thoughts, will start seeping up to kind of get us pulled into that. And before we know it, because they kind of come, we might almost say disguised as these are superior Zen thoughts, right? This is a thought I can follow. This is what meditation is for, is so I can have these thoughts. Who among us has not gone down that path? But that's not silent illumination. That's no longer silence. It starts with the seepage, but then it expands because that's its nature. But by the time that's happened, maybe a considerable amount of time has elapsed, and you realize, oh my, I'm Zen daydreaming. But it's a beautiful daydream, and it feels like Zen. But we then, this is the practice, we let that go. We come back. We come back to whether it's the breath or just this open awareness, being present. So it's the same practice as the ordinary mundane thoughts. And because we're not discriminating, we're not saying, oh, this is a Zen thought, so that's a superior one. We let those pass through. We have the discriminator at the gateway of our thoughts. You get through. That's a thought about emptiness. You go right on through. But this isn't about thoughts. This is about that direct experience. That's what the silence and silent illumination is allowing the illumination to shine forth. Allowing it to shine forth. Not creating it. So it's a different way of seeing that whole phenomenon. We think we have to shine the light all here, there, and everywhere when we're looking for something. But actually, no. In fact, it's so radical, we kind of stop looking. We just become present, silent. So the mind enters silence. Silence, but great attentiveness. So we think of a silent mind, totally silent, as being a coma, right? That's not the case at all. It's very aware. But then, we're discovering maybe in comas, that's exactly where people are at. They are aware of what they're experiencing. So who knows? So moving on to his next important point. from my perspective. He says, Hongzou tells us that this bright, empty field, which lies immanent in us all, can in no way be cultivated or artificially enhanced. We must only recognize it and not allow our busy, mischievous thinking and conditioning to interfere with our own radiant clarity. So this is something, and we've heard myriad teachings pointing to this. This is something that's already there. We already have it. So we just simply have to learn how we can awaken to have that active awareness, ongoing. Continuous practice translates into continuous enlightenment because it's not a final endpoint that you achieve and you have. It's only through practice that we can have it. But very, very important point here that it can't be cultivated or artificially enhanced. So we look back then at the title of Taigen's book, Cultivating the Empty Field, and it's like, well, that we can speak of it in a sense as cultivation, but it's not cultivation as we normally think of it.
Would you use cultivation, synonym for cultivation in the sense, would you say, I forgot the word I wanted to ask about, what is that? The cultivation of the empty field, would you say that's the same as meditation?
Yes, 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 yes. So it's becoming aware of the field that's always there.
So that's the meaning of cultivation in this sense.
Right. Because normally we think of cultivation as creating something that's not yet there. You know, down to cultivating a piece of land. You know, you're going to work with the things that are there, but you're trying to bring forth something that's not yet there. So cultivating the empty field is such a beautiful way of expressing it. So in a sense, yeah, there's cultivation taking place, but it's not to generate something that's not already there. Quite the reverse. It's to become aware of what is already there.
Mhm.
So it's a whole different aspect of this term cultivation. But we know Zen, we have to be pretty flexible with our use of terms because they're called into heavy-duty situations that will stretch meanings of terms we're accustomed to using in maybe a different way. We have to be flexible. Always have to be flexible. And again, this notion that we must only recognize it and not allow our busy, mischievous thinking and conditioning to interfere with our own radiant clarity, because our mind wants to immediately jump in again. So that's the importance of this silence, and the silent mind that's very aware of what's happening here, but resist that extensive conditioning we've received throughout our lifetime of being able to build conceptual castles and just be present at this most fundamental level, of which we use a term like suchness to point to. Another term that's, what the heck is that? But this is Zen terminology that through this practice and through these other teachings, we start to find entry points into a deeper, more profound understanding of something like suchness, which also runs through uh, both Dogen's teachings and Hongzhu's teachings, is seeing this practice as being our way of entering into suchness. As Dogen expresses it, if you want to experience suchness, you must practice suchness without delay. In other words, right now. Right now. Don't see it as a path to future suchness, but it's right here. So practice it right here, right now. And it will open up before you. So next point. Hongzhu overheard a monk reciting the line from the Flower Ornament Sutra. So obviously I had to include this. Pretty timely for us. This is the quote. The eyes which our parents give us can behold 3,000 words. Upon hearing this, Hongzhu experienced an awakening. So he experienced, I thought this was kind of interesting, cool for us as students of the Flower Ornament or Flower Garland Sutra, that no less a figure than Hongzhu hears a line from that sutra and has an awakening. Kind of comparable to Huineng hearing the line from the Diamond Sutra and having an awakening that would lead him to the fifth ancestor's temple. So, next point. And this point is referencing Hongzhu's practice instructions. And this collection of Hongzhu's texts consists of two parts. The first part is labeled practice instructions. And then the second part is labeled religious verses. And Guidepost of Silent Illumination falls under the religious verses. So it's describing this state. And practice instructions, as you would imagine, are kind of the sorts of things that Dogen would often utilize because he's establishing these brand new temples, trying to bring a teaching that was completely new to Japan. So practice instructions certainly figured very prominently for Dogen. And the codes that were established for practice, very extensive. The rules for the operation of a temple. He was very extensive about that because he recognized that practice being enlightenment and practice involves all those types of things. How you prepare a meal, how you eat a meal, how you clean the temple and care for that facility, how you care for others. So it's so, but here's what Taigen has to say in this regard. Hongzhu's practice instructions can be more fully appreciated if it's understood how they echo and synthesize the root teachings of this lineage, our Soto, and in China it was referred to as Cao Dong, and Dong is for Dongshan. They echo and synthesize these root teachings. Particularly important to a comprehension of Hongzhu's philosophy and vocabulary are the works of Shito and Dongshan and their teachings regarding the interplay of universal and particular, which Dongshan formulated in the Five Ranks teaching, which we just get a true, literally a taste of, uh, through the taste of the 5 flavored herb in the Song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi. And of course, Shito wrote Sandokai, the merging of difference and unity. So this can be seen as just a carrying forward, once again, of these teachings that preceded Hongzou by 300 years, maybe, something along those lines, the time of Shito and Dongshan. So these teachings don't just lie fallow and get passed down, but they get kind of reshaped through practice, through deep realizations, so that other teachers like Hongzou and later Dogen can begin to take them and give expression to them in broader ways, so that there are more entry points by which we can enter into the illumination and silent illumination, so that we can see this unified whole. The house in the House and Rafters chapter that we just looked at Thursday. The house that we can only see in that direct fashion, because if we're just looking at the rafters, we're missing the entirety. Rannigan?
I like your description of the saying new entry points,
Yeah,
because it's so, I'm very grateful that you share all of this, because these new entry points, as you bring all of these teachers in,
right.
it enriches, it's an opportunity for us to enrich our practice.
Exactly. Yeah,
It's
yeah. And then it becomes up to us to further enrich it through our practice. And that's really the key to our development and our ability to carry out the bodhisattva vows, is that through our own practice. So we don't just carry forward the ancestors' experiences. They're entry points for us to find our experiences. And they will be unique. They have to be, because we're in a different era. We're in a different part of the globe. And life here is way different. So it would have to change. Otherwise, we're practicing something old. Why do that? It's got to remain alive. And who keeps that alive? You and me. You and me. So that's the heart of the matter, is our practice. So, and these entry points allow our practice to really become more expansive. And then we start to feel like it's starting to shift into my practice. I'm not just, copying the Buddhas and the ancestors, but I actually feel confident enough through the practice. So the confidence is simply there as part of this non-dualistic realm that's always supporting us, holding us up. And through that, then we can go forward and find our own illumination.
Yeah.
Mike Welker's been working with a koan that involves this sense of amongst individual practice. It's one of those that involves approval of one, disapproval of the other. Even though they were answering Joshu's question in identical way. One has it right, and the other one, just no hope. And that's looking deeper at that person's individual practice and their illumination And how solid is that? How does one carry that forth? So, but yeah, this interplay between the relative and the absolute is, we could just make a big circuitous route, and after Dogen, we could come all the way back to Shito and Dongsha. That would just, well, they're all talking about the same thing in different ways, but keeps coming back to that. And it's not just Soto Zen. You'll recall when we were looking at Hakuin through Busho Lan's book, even there, he indicated that the next to the last of the endpoint koans of the fully developed student is the 5 ranks. That's the penultimate koan. And the ultimate one is the precepts. How do you carry forth your practice into daily life? The precepts. And the importance of that we manifest. Certainly, I mean, it's manifest throughout all the aspects of our practice, but we kind of make sure in our monthly full moon ceremony that we give expression to that in a focused way by everybody receiving the precepts, not waiting for a special ordination or anything, but we receive them every month through our participation in the full moon ceremony. And both the 5 ranks and the precepts are this relationship between the ultimate and the particular. How will I respond in this situation? And recognizing, and with reference to precepts, that there isn't some ironclad set response. We have to be able, through illumination, to allow through silence to be able to illuminate this situation so that a way forward manifests that's in keeping with what presents itself to us. And it's transcending the dualities of right and wrong, for instance. We have to let that go. So it transcends what many people would consider to be the heart of ethics, that you have to have right and wrong. But as we look at Thursday, when we look at it holistically, and what are the causes and conditions, judgmental mind starts to get tamped down, and we begin to focus on a bigger picture, much bigger picture that also includes us. So, kind of like Christian teachings through the founder of Christianity, Jesus, about looking within before we judge others. So, you could say he was teaching this non-dual approach. But let's see. And to put it and then I'm going to close up here, where Taigen says that Shito, who wrote Sandokai and also the Song of the Grass Hut, Shito's categories of philosophical analysis derive from native Chinese Taoist yin-yang dialectics, and to a great extent from the Chinese Huayan Buddhist dialectical system. So this just different ways of seeing the interplay from a dualistic way like yin and yang, but as part of that deeper understanding to see that they're never truly apart. They're always together, working together. And again, the Huayan dialectical system, and that's what we're studying. That's the Flower Garland Sutra, the system of interdependence. So the dialectic can be seen as just the way these seeming oppositions actually flow in a harmonized way, creating harmony as they go. Things that seem to be opposed suddenly merge. And there seems to be times of great harmony, and then they part again. Also known as history. It's kind of the nature of reality, of existence, and to begin to understand the merging of difference and unity is to begin to see things in such a fashion. The playing out of forces like yin yang, or the interdependence of all the myriad things. What kind of world does that create? Because that's really the rub here, is bringing diversity together with this oneness that we also experience, and to see that they're interdependent, just like yin and yang. The absolute and the relative are interdependent. Harkens back to the Heart Sutra, form and emptiness. They're interdependent. They have to have each other in order to be present at all. And now we're back to the house and the rafters. If you pull any rafter out, it's a different house. Any moment. And it's different. It's different. It's so closely interwoven. And that's an important understanding, I think, early on in Zen practice to have, because it kind of imparts to us the urgency of this great matter. If each moment is really so crucial, then we damn well better be practicing, right? It would seem to be the message to take away. Don't waste time, right? Don't waste this moment is a better way of expressing it, because that's what time shakes out to us, this moment, and then this moment. Don't waste it. Don't waste it, because it's the whole edifice. All right, so I think we've covered a good bit of territory here, but we still have a bit of time if there are any questions. Joe?
Yes. I'm a little confused about and I'm continuously confused about the use of the term non-dual.
Mm-hmm.
And you just went through that nicely as far as positioning it with oneness being that seamless, no separation between the dual and the non-dual, and the yin and the yang, and all of that thinking. Yet we constantly refer to being non-dual.
Right.
It's like, is somebody trying to tell me I need to think non-dualistically, which is an oxymoron? It's like non-dualistically compared to what?
Yeah.
So I'm just always confused about the use of the term so much in our teaching.
Yeah.
We're trying to teach something, and I'm saying, what is it we're teaching? Because I'm confused about that term.
Right. And really, I mean, I think I can point to another aspect of the teaching, but because they're all part of the same edifice, it's not like it's any more important than the teaching of non-duality. But and I remember the question came up when Ben was here, and I injected there too about, and I brought in the faith mind chant from our chant book. Just say not to, because and what that's pointing to is this truth about Zen practice being to strip things down rather than create new things. So by creating something like the oneness, we can be seen as creating like a new ultimate category, and that can become a catching point for us. So we have to be careful there. That's why just say not to is kind of facilitating that cutting away our tendency to always be discriminating, and taking that further to see how our discriminations, and I've used this description before, is kind of like a crack in a windshield that just keeps spreading. It creates more cracks and more cracks. So if you don't heal it, it just fractures all everywhere. And that's our dualistic way of approaching things. If there's no healing that takes place there, so to speak, then it takes over, and we see the world completely in a fractured way, which of course we have that tendency to do. So to heal it means to bring it together, so that because of the truth of interdependence, healing can happen, because the capability is there to make whole. That's healing. Literally. I mean, that's what healing is to make whole. So that your whole body in the medical field can support that well-being. If there's a part of your body that can't support that any longer, you have to enter it into your healthy living system. So I can receive all the help that your body is there waiting to give it. So whatever the obstruction is, the medical people try to open that up so that your body can do the healing. Basic folk wisdom is the body will heal itself. You just need to eliminate what's fracturing that particular part from the rest of the body. And that's kind of the way I think we could, through that medical analogy, see the healing involved in non-dualistic thinking. The seeming oxymoron, which is, so we could maybe better call it non-dualistic insight, because insight, by its very nature, is unitary. It's kind of tied into what in psychology, we could call gestalt. It's just this moment in its entirety. So that's just a way of seeing this matter of how dualisms, they spread. They spread. And the more they spread, the more we come to appreciate the damage they can do. And we need that healing that's provided by a spiritual practice that's seeking that sense of oneness. And they're all doing that in their various ways. So there's great wisdom that lies behind all the traditions. But what can happen is they get caught up in their dualistic ways of seeing the world, and all of a sudden they're contributing more dualities. So rather than helping to heal, they're creating more division. So hence the admonitions about being always on the watch about these subtle uprisings of our dualistic mind, because they will come up. And if we're not really steadfast in our understanding of non-duality, we'll get pulled along. And the payoff then is the fractured world that's simply exploding from all the myriad dualities that keep dividing more and more and more without end.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? I don't have to look at the screen. I'll just see myself. Okay, well, let's chant out then. May our intention equally penetrate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.